About 18 years ago, I began to practice a form of meditation that I didn't know the name to at the time. I now understand that it is called Tonglen. When I began, the initiation came from within. I was at the time dealing with repetitive acute anxiety and acute suffering, and that suffering was centered in my lungs and in my head and in my heart rate. And while I was feeling the suffering, I was moving back in time, and I would envision things that had happened in the past that I had preferred not to happen, and then I would envision what I had to say about that and how I might stand up for myself in a way that I wasn't able to when the events occurred. And this was an activity that I didn't feel in control of. It would take over my screen of experience, and it was not only impulsive but compulsive. It would cycle over and over in a repetitive fashion, and it was an activity that was highly charged with emotion. What came from within me at this time typically would happen at night when I was hoping to rest and ideally fall asleep, and this experience would take over my body. And I very much wanted mercy and wanted relief and wanted to be having a different experience. And what began to happen is I began to consider others who may be experiencing the same thing at the same time. And in that way, I began to, even though I didn't know their names, or I didn't know where they lived, or even that they were alive at this time, I felt a connection with them in what I was feeling and how familiar it must be to them. And then what that implied was also that if there were other people who'd experienced this, then it was also likely that they'd experienced the events that I was compulsively reviewing in my history. Then from there, the recognition that there were people experiencing what I had in my past right at that moment. Children experiencing traumatic events right at that moment when I was reviewing my own. That recognition brought me to a practice that I now know the name of, Tonglen. It's a meditative practice that hones in on the in-breath and the out-breath, and the focus in the inhale is taking in the suffering of others, and in the exhale, breathing out toward them any peace, any relief that I may have assembled, or that I may even imagine access to. Suddenly, we're all together. I'm inhaling what they're feeling, right now, what they felt in the past that may be compulsively entering their screen of experience now. I'm inhaling in, and I'm exhaling any peace that I have to offer. What becomes apparent in this experience is manifold. One thing I've already spoken to, which is companionship and togetherness, because what I'm feeling companionship in is not only an understanding that I am not alone in these feelings in my human form, I'm also registering the relief that is multiplying and flowing out of me. I imagine it to be whatever I've accessed, whatever I've found. And as I exhale it with companionship and with sincere vibrance with anyone else who's here with me, I feel expansion in that space where I wasn't sure before I began to breathe this way that I could breathe at all. The recognition of that expansion connects me to what might be possible there. I also connect in that recognition to an image of filtering. It's no wonder I see a filter, a cleansing, as what we do with the breath as we inhale is filter it through our systems. Take what we need from it. Take what is clean from it. Let it expand the pulsing in our bloodstream. The more and more I practice this, the more I can feel a vivid vibration in my bloodstream. A number of years into this practice, what I began to feel was a breaking open, which was accompanied by a rocking sensation and the most relieving tears flowed from my eyes. Now, years and years after that relieving experience, having practiced it so much, now I can enter that stream anytime I want. I feel the rocking. While I'm not sure how to describe it, what I feel when it happens is that the fabric of the sacred all, one could say God, one could say Tao, one could say the ground of being, is rocking the little baby that is inside of me. The little baby that is inside all of us. We all want relief. Without further ado, I'll move on toward today's readings. This is my second day reading the passages that are most prominent to me from book 27 in my A Book a Week series, Training the Mind, by Chogyam Trungpa. Enjoy.
I'm at the bottom of page 33 and I'll move on to page 34. This is in reference to the practice of Tonglen. Our genuineness has to be shared with someone, has to be given up. Genuineness shouldn't be regarded as our one and only family jewel that we want to hang on to. We have to give our genuineness away to someone. We don't particularly lose it that way. Instead, we bring other people's deception into us, and we work on our own genuineness along with that. So exchanging ourselves for others is something more than we might have thought. It is more than just jumping from a hot bath to a cold bath. Beyond that, you begin to develop a sense of joy. You are actually doing something very useful and workable and fundamentally wonderful. You're not only teaching yourself how to be unselfish in the conventional sense, but you're also teaching the world how to overcome hypocrisy, which is becoming thicker and thicker lately as the world gets more and more sophisticated, so to speak, more and more into the dark ages, in other words. Sending and taking, the practice of Tonglen, is an extension of shamatha discipline. In shamatha discipline, we do not dwell on anything, but we are processed by working with movement. We don't just try to hold our mind completely steady, completely settled, but we try to use the fickleness of our mental process by following our breath and by looking at our subconscious thoughts. Page 48. Without this world, we cannot attain enlightenment. There would be no journey. By rejecting the world, we would be rejecting the ground and rejecting the path. All our past history and all our neurosis is related with others in some sense. All of our experiences are based on others basically. As long as we have a sense of practice, some realization that we're treading on the path, every one of those little details that are seemingly obstacles to us becomes an essential part of the path. Without them, we cannot attain anything at all. We have no feedback. We have nothing to work with. Absolutely nothing to work with. So, in a sense, all the things taking place around our world, all the irritations and all the problems are crucial. Without others, we cannot attain enlightenment. In fact, we cannot even tread on the path. In other words, we could say that if there is no noise outside during our sitting meditation, we cannot develop mindfulness. If we do not have aches and pains in our body, we cannot attain mindfulness. We cannot actually meditate. If everything were lovey-dovey and jellyfish-like, there would be nothing to work with. Everything would be completely blank. Because of all these textures around us, we are enriched. Therefore, we can sit and practice and meditate. We have a reference point, encouragement, discouragement, or whatever. Everything is related to the path. Page 55. There's some possibility that when you hear that if you just simply meditate on the four kayas, everything is going to be protected, you may think that your kid is going to be protected, your brothers and sisters, your property, and your motor cars. But this protection is not quite at that level. It is shunyata protection, emptiness or openness protection, which is that you no longer have anywhere to dwell. You are suspended in shunyata. It is a very clever way of approaching the whole thing. You're not talking about egolessness here. You're trying to work out your protection, but you might find yourself being egoless and realizing that there is nothing to protect. So your protection is groundlessness. It is a very clinical approach in some sense. There can be no germs around if you have no ground on which to collect germs. Page 58. This is part of a description of the practice of accumulating merit. Whatever happens, let it happen. You are not particularly looking for pleasure or pain. As the supplications that go along with this particular practice say, if it is better for me to be dead, let me be dead. If it is better for me to be alive, let me be alive. If it is better for me to have pleasure, let me have pleasure. If it is better for me to have pain, let me have pain. It is a very direct approach, like diving into an ice-cold swimming pool in the middle of winter. If that is what is best for your constitution, go ahead and do it. It is the idea of having a direct link with reality, very simple, without any scheming at all. In particular, if there is any desire or any fear, you act in the opposite way. You jump into your fear and you refrain from your desire. It is the same approach as taking on other people's pain and giving your pleasure to them in the Tonglen practice. I'm on page 59, and this is in reference to the practice of laying down evil deeds. The first step is getting tired of one's own neurosis. That is the first important thing. If you were not tired of doing the same thing again and again all the time, if you were thriving on it, you probably would not have a chance to do anything with it. But once you begin to get tired of it, you say, I shouldn't have done that, or here I go again, or I should have known better, or I don't feel so good. These are the sort of remarks you make, particularly when you wake up in the morning with a heavy hangover. That's good. That is the sign that you can actually confess your neurotic crimes. You come back and tell what you did last night or yesterday, or what you've done previously. All these things are so embarrassing, it's terrible. You feel like not getting out of your bed. You don't want to go outside the door or face the world. That real feeling of total embarrassment, that totally shitty feeling, for lack of a better word, that sense that your whole gut is rotten, is the first step. That sense of regret is not purely social regret, it's personal regret. And that shameful feeling begins to creep through our marrow, into our bones and our hairs. The sunshine coming through the windows begins to mock us too. It is that kind of thing. That is the first step. And having it is regarded as a very healthy direction toward the second. The second step is to refrain from that, or to repent.